The smell hit me before I even took a sip. It wasn't coffee. Not really. It was off, metallic, bitter, faintly chemical. My husband, Alex, was standing across the kitchen counter, smiling like nothing was wrong, his hand resting casually on the edge of the counter. "Morning, love," he said cheerfully. "Made your usual." Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. I glanced down at the mug in my hand, pretending to take a careful sip. My instincts screamed. Something was wrong. My name is Clara Benson, and for the past 5 years, I've thought I knew my husband. Thought I trusted him. Thought our marriage was a safe, ordinary life. But moments like this, they gnawed at the edges of that illusion. And the villain? Well, it wasn't just Alex this time. It was Samantha, my sister-in-law. Alex's younger sister. The one with the polished smile, the effortless charm, the habit of inserting herself into every family moment with a subtle, invasive intensity. My instincts whispered that something was off about the way she lingered in the kitchen that morning, pretending to check her phone while keeping an eye on us. I remembered last week, the way Alex had been distant, oddly secretive about his phone. The way Samantha had just happened to visit unexpectedly, again. And then this morning, this coffee. I couldn't ignore it. I waited until Alex turned to pour himself a second cup and then, with a calm precision that masked the racing pulse in my chest, I swapped my mug with Samantha's. Not a dramatic move, just a quiet, calculated replacement. My fingers brushed against her hand when she leaned over to take it, and I smiled sweetly. She didn't notice. I placed my original mug safely on the counter, pretending to sip from my own as Alex muttered about rushing to work. They didn't know. They had no idea what I had just done. And that's when the unease truly set in. Not because of what they might do to me, but because I realized how easily trust could be twisted. How thin the line was between ordinary life and chaos. I wasn't going to be naive. Not this time. Samantha's laugh tinkled from the living room, too light, too rehearsed, and Alex's distracted glance didn't reach my eyes. But I had noticed everything. Every smirk, every whispered comment, every subtle glance exchanged behind my back. The kitchen, quiet moments ago, now felt like a stage. I was no longer just a participant, I was a strategist. And they didn't even know the game had begun. I sipped my coffee again, this time from the swapped mug, and waited. Because the moment they realized, the truth would hit. And when it did, everything would change. It didn't take long for the first red flags to appear. At first, they were subtle, almost ignorable. Alex's attention had shifted in ways I couldn't explain. He would answer texts in hushed whispers, closing the door to the study as soon as I approached. Sometimes he'd laugh quietly at his phone, but when I asked what was funny, he'd look startled, almost guilty, and mutter something vague about work stuff. Then there was Samantha. She seemed to appear everywhere at just the right, or wrong, moments. If Alex and I were planning dinner, she would casually drop by, claiming she had forgotten something or just wanted to help. Always smiling, always helpful, yet there was something in her eyes that made me uneasy, a glint I couldn't read but didn't trust. The favoritism was obvious now, too. Alex would nod to her suggestions before even considering mine. In family discussions, her opinions were elevated above mine, even when mine were more practical, more thought out. I started keeping a mental tally, every time he sided with her, every time he dismissed me, every time a small lie spun its way into our conversation. The lies, tiny at first, piled up. I didn't touch that when I knew he had, I didn't call her when I saw the missed calls on his phone. And every time I pressed, he'd sigh, roll his eyes, and make me feel guilty for doubting him. The emotional strain was exhausting. I felt my confidence eroding day by day, my trust slipping through fingers I couldn't hold on to. And the money. Small things started disappearing from our shared account, just enough to notice, not enough to question outright. Dinner expenses that didn't exist. Extra charges at restaurants. Cash withdrawals he couldn't explain. The kitchen, once our safe space, began to feel like a surveillance room. Every glance at Alex, every smile from Samantha, felt calculated. I couldn't tell if it was paranoia or reality, but the gut instinct I had that morning with the coffee told me it wasn't paranoia. Something was brewing, and I was standing at the edge of it. By the end of the week, I realized I couldn't ignore it any longer. The tight knot in my stomach wasn't just anxiety, it was anticipation, like knowing a storm was coming but not knowing how severe it would be. And yet, I had to play along. Alex still had no idea that I had swapped the mugs, that I knew there was a line being crossed. Samantha still smiled, unaware that her game had been noticed. I began keeping quiet notes, small mental reminders of inconsistencies and hidden behaviors, cataloging every lie, every suspicious movement. Every subtle betrayal added to the growing weight on my chest. I knew one thing for certain, this was not going to end quietly. And when the moment came to reveal the truth, I would be ready. I should have seen it sooner. Every suspicious glance, every whispered conversation, every disappearing dollar, it all led to the same brutal truth. That evening, Alex poured himself a cup of coffee while Samantha leaned casually against the counter. I watched them, pretending to scroll through my phone, pretending not to notice the subtle exchange of glances and half-smiles. Then I saw it, a small envelope slid from Samantha's hand into Alex's pocket when I wasn't looking. Curiosity and dread collided in my chest. I waited until they left the kitchen, then retrieved it. My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were documents, financial statements, account numbers, transfer authorizations, all detailing how Alex and Samantha had been siphoning money from my inheritance. Money that my late grandmother had left me, money I had been saving for years for a home, for security, for the future I had planned. They hadn't just ignored my trust, they had stolen from me, piece by piece, under my own roof. I felt the world tilt. The betrayal was not abstract or hypothetical. It was real. My husband, the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, was in collusion with his own sister to rob me blind. The woman I had thought of as family had been the accomplice, smiling and playing the part of supportive relative while secretly aiding him. Heartbreak hit first, a deep, gutting ache that made me feel hollow. I had been living with them, eating the same meals, sharing the same home, while they plotted against me. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of trust, now a facade masking deceit. Then came rage. Blinding, fiery, all-consuming. How dare they think I wouldn't notice? How dare they assume my silence was weakness? How dare they manipulate me and treat me like a fool in my own house? Disbelief followed, creeping in between sobs and clenched fists. I stared at the papers over and over, hoping that somehow my mind had twisted reality, but it hadn't. The evidence was irrefutable. They had planned it meticulously. They had executed it with precision. And I had been blind. But beneath the heartbreak, beneath the anger, a spark ignited. A tiny, stubborn ember of determination. I could do one of two things: collapse under the betrayal, let them win, or act. I closed the envelope slowly, my jaw tightening. My hands no longer shook. My tears no longer fell. This was not the end. I whispered to myself, voice low but firm. They think they've taken everything, but they've underestimated me. They've underestimated my patience. My mind. My resolve. I already began formulating a plan in my head. Step by step, carefully, methodically. Justice wasn't a threat, it was inevitable. And when it came, it would be personal, precise, and unforgettable. For now, I let them believe they were untouchable. Let them laugh, let them relax. The storm was coming, and they had no idea how devastating it would be. For hours, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope, the damning documents spread before me like a map of their betrayal. Heartbroken, furious, betrayed, every emotion collided inside me, threatening to drown my sense of self. 15 years of trust, 15 years of love, all trampled under the calculated greed of the two people I thought I could rely on. And then, a sudden clarity hit me. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't powerless. They had underestimated me. They had assumed my silence, my composure, my patience meant ignorance. But I had eyes. I had memory. I had foresight. And most importantly, I had proof. I remembered every small red flag I had ignored, the secretive calls, the mysterious envelopes, the strange favoritism, the disappearing money. Each one was a puzzle piece, and now, finally, I could see the full picture. They had built their scheme believing I was naive, compliant, unaware. They had no idea I had been watching, noting, waiting. A surge of determination replaced my shock. The heartbreak remained, yes, but it transformed into fire. I would not let them get away with this. I would not let years of deceit dictate the rest of my life. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. A deep breath filled my lungs, steadying my pulse. My mind began to map out the steps I would take, not impulsively, not recklessly, but strategically. I would gather every shred of evidence, document every interaction, every financial discrepancy, every lie. I would consult professionals, attorneys, investigators, anyone who could ensure this betrayal didn't go unpunished. And when the time came, I would expose them, not with tantrums or theatrics, but with undeniable truth. I picked up my notebook and began jotting down notes, outlining a plan with precision. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. Every move calculated, every reaction anticipated. It wasn't revenge born of spite, it was justice, meticulous and absolute. And as I wrote, I whispered to myself. They think they've destroyed me. They think I'm broken. But I am stronger than they could ever imagine. I looked at the envelope one last time before sealing it carefully in a drawer. It would serve as my starting point, a weapon disguised as paper. I didn't need to act today. I didn't need to confront them yet. Patience was my ally now, and patience would make their downfall inevitable. For the first time since the betrayal was revealed, I felt calm. Focused. Powerful. The hurt still lingered, yes, but it was no longer paralyzing. It had transformed into clarity, into purpose, into a resolve that could not be shaken. And in that moment, I knew, the game had shifted. I was no longer the victim. I was the strategist. The storm was coming, and I would ensure it hit with precision. They had made a grave mistake, underestimating me. And soon, they would pay the price. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The pain was still there, but now it pulsed with purpose. If they wanted to play dirty, I would play smarter. I began with the simplest step, documentation. Every text message, every email, every bank statement, screenshotted, printed, timestamped. I created folders, both digital and physical, labeling each one meticulously. The discrepancy in our joint account, the mysterious withdrawals, the transfers to an unknown number, all of it told a story they didn't realize I was reading. Then came observation. For a week, I acted normal. Calm. Unbothered. I made coffee, asked about their day, even laughed at their jokes. My husband looked relieved, assuming my silence meant ignorance. My sister-in-law remained smug, flitting around the house like she owned it. But behind their backs, I took notes. Every meeting. Every lie. Every shift in their behavior. I recorded conversations with a discreet voice app whenever things felt off. I tracked their schedules, mapping patterns they never thought I'd notice. I stepped outside, the cold November air brushing against my face, and for the first time in months, I felt light. 15 years of betrayal, manipulation, and quiet suffering were finally vindicated. Every secret, every lie, every attempt to undermine me had been exposed, not through threats or anger, but through preparation, patience, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Colleagues, friends, even distant family members approached me, some in awe, some quietly apologetic for doubting me. They had all underestimated me, just as my husband and sister-in-law had. But now, the balance had shifted. I wasn't the powerless wife, they were the defeated. The legal consequences were swift. The authorities froze their accounts, the court issued restitution orders, and criminal charges ensured that neither would escape the consequences of their actions. They had gambled on my silence, and now they faced public disgrace, financial ruin, and legal accountability. I returned home later that day, feeling a profound sense of calm. The house, once a theater of suspicion and subtle threats, now felt like my sanctuary again. I sipped a cup of coffee, not from any swapped mug, not laced with tension, but made purely for me. It tasted bitterly sweet, a private celebration of survival, resilience, and triumph. The experience had changed me. I was no longer just Clara, the trusting wife, the accommodating sister-in-law, the overlooked partner. I was Clara, the strategist, the unshakable force who turned betrayal into justice. I had faced deceit at the highest level and emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The lesson was clear: those who underestimate the quiet, observant, patient can fall the hardest. Revenge need not be reckless, it can be precise, inevitable, and poetic. Sparkle's goosebump poetic justice line. The ones who thought they could poison my life discovered that a mind sharpened by betrayal is deadlier than any cup of coffee. Movie camera message to viewers. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Felt blindsided while everyone else seemed oblivious? Share your story in the comments below. Let the world hear how you rose above. And if you want more stories of cunning, courage, and ultimate justice, like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because sometimes, the hero doesn't just survive. They rise stronger, smarter, and unstoppable.